All right, and welcome to Evolve Content Creation class number 2. And today on Sunday Night Live with Evolve, we are going to cover all kinds of good stuff. We're going to talk about content creators and how to, they need to be adaptable, and you need to know more than just one trait. You can't just be a video guy. You can't just be a photo guy. You got to know everything in between, right? We're going to talk about planning your scenes out, going to locations ahead of time, and all of that good stuff. We're going to talk about planning for delivery and how you should under-promise and over-deliver. We're going to talk about shooting B-roll and much, much more. So I'm excited to dive in with you guys. Let's get going. So first and foremost, it is crucial to be adaptable as a content creator. You can't only know one thing. So, for instance, I came from a design background. And so you could throw me a logo, you could throw me typography, you could give me a poster to design, a t-shirt to design, a title sequence, whatever. I could figure it out because I come from a background with design. Then I evolved in my creative endeavors and I decided to go into motion design. And so then you could throw me a movie trailer, you could throw me a commercial, video, any kind of video gig with type or graphics, and I'd figure it out. And then I continued into learning about videography and photography in that order. And I would say I'm not the best by any means videography. I'm not the best photographer. I'm definitely not the best designer, but that tends to be where I lean in my excellence. I tend to be better at that than in photography, for instance. But I'm learning all of these new things. And so now when a client hires me, I can then go on location, and if they're like, oh, actually, we'd really love to get some portraits of the actresses and actors. Oh, well, we didn't really plan that ahead of time, but I can totally do that on the spot. Because I packed gear that I brought extra gear, I prepared, I know how to do that. And being able to be adaptable, especially in the field, is crucial. So content creators need to be adaptable. And you don't want to just have one thing that you can offer, because there are very few people in the world who only can do one thing and they're extremely specialized and they can charge a lot of money. And that's not a bad road to go down. But that's not a content creator. A content creator can develop content, can develop these amazing stories and bring things to life in a lot of different ways, not just in photography. They can take a photo and then they can bring it to life in a gallery. And then they can maybe, like I have friends who are photographers and copywriters and writers. And I have friends who are videographers and photographers, and they mix in a little bit of both. I would say you need to be really exceptional at one thing, but you also need to be good at several others. So don't limit your knowledge to only one trait. That's a very important tip. So as you pursue whatever it is that you're looking to do in music, design, videography, whatever it is, also pick up another hobby that's completely different. So you're doing music. Well, maybe it'd be really great to learn some design too, because somebody's got to make your album art, and it's not always easy to find somebody who can nail it and do it for free when you have no budget for it. So pick up some design to do some self-promotion. Design is always a good one to have under the belt a little bit, and being able to pick up Adobe Photoshop and know your way around, right? I would also say that as you start to get really good at a couple of things, choose what you really want to be exceptional at. And for me, I have chosen lately, the last year or two, to really focus on shooting photography. I love it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the whole process, from shooting in the field and working with models or out in landscapes and shooting just nature and all of its glory, and then bringing that into Lightroom and cranking out different looks and different moods and cropping it and then publishing it. It's so gratifying to me. I really enjoy that. And so even though design is probably arguably what makes me more money, photography is something that I have in my back pocket that I can pull out and just use it anytime. And I've made a lot of money through photography as well. Now, it's not all about making money. And I'll be the first person to tell you that if you're enjoying what you do and you're able to support yourself, it just allows you to be able to do more of it. So money is important in that way and in many other ways. It's just a tool, like a camera is a tool. So be adaptable and then start to hone in on what you want to be exceptional at. And it's okay to not be the best in the world at it, but you should have something that people know you for. So Joe is photographer/designer. Well, maybe they don't know that I also do a little bit of video, a little bit of web design, not much, a little bit of music. I don't. But I'm known for a couple of things because those are what I'm exceptional at. And that's good. As a content creator, that's going to bring me, and it has brought me a long way. So I encourage you to be adaptable, have a few different skills under your belt, and focus on one thing. After a while, after experimenting in the different areas, focus on one thing you want to get exceptional at so you can raise your prices and sort of be known for that. The next thing I want to talk about is getting out into the field and working with clients. It can be really overwhelming. It can be really stressful to set up shoots and to get out into the field and work with people who are paying you, because there's this expectation, and if you don't meet it, you feel very insecure, and it's a struggle to, all of us as artists, we all have insecurities and we all struggle with different things, and that's totally okay. And it's just like anything. When the first time you ever go to a gym and you're looking around and people are doing all these exercises that you have no idea how to do, the first time you go to a yoga class, or the first time you walk into a church, you're like, any environment that's new to humans, we always are like, okay, how do we get in? But after a few times of doing it, you'll find your groove, and that's good. That's good. And I think with being out into the field, and I say the field, I mean out on a shoot. It could be a wedding. It could be going to an office in Manhattan to do a design project. It could be going to a studio to record an album. It could be working at a studio for a famous artist who's coming in to sing, and then you're recording them. It could be going to Silicon Valley and working on a documentary. It's a project I did last year, just a short episode series. That completely put me out of my element, and I was very intimidated by the high caliber, famous/rich people that I was working with, and the first time was it was a little clear that I was uncomfortable. Luckily, it was a multi-day shoot, and by the second and third day, I felt confident, and I was able to sort of cover up for the fact that I hadn't felt that way on day one. I remember the first few weddings that I shot, that were paid, I was so terrified that I was going to miss something. And to this day, they can still be very intimidating, because if you don't get that perfect moment, they will know. There's no covering up. You can't say, oh, well, I was shooting more fine art. They're like, no, we wanted the kiss and you missed it. Ouch. There's a very low threshold for mistakes at weddings, which is why I don't do them very often. The more that you are out doing the work with clients, the better you're going to be. One way that you could practice doing this before somebody hires you is to work with models. Working with models, and I say models very loosely, I mean anybody who's willing to get their picture taken, okay? And it doesn't have to be this perfectly beautiful magazine cover kind of person. It could be anybody. It could be your sister. And my sisters happen to be perfectly beautiful magazine. I just had to throw that out there. But you could work with your friend and just bring them out to the lake and try to get into the shade on a sunny day. Have them standing at different angles and sort of working it. And you as the photographer have to learn in that moment how to adjust in the environment, and then mix it up. Step out into the water, get some angles shooting into the sun, get some angles shooting away from the sun with it over your back, hitting them in the face, but then getting them under a palm tree or a branch or something that has a cool shadow. Experiment, be out there and really mix it up. And in doing that, what that's forcing you to do, and this isn't just in photography, this is in any field, it's forcing you out of your element. You're uncomfortable. And it's also forcing you to learn really great communication under stress. And I would say communication under stress is something that is undervalued. When I learned communication under stress at my very first job out of college at the Today Show, my stress level was here. Okay, I was trying to get my designs in on time, and we had 5 minutes to crank all of this stuff out and get the words on the screen. It was live television, and millions of people are watching. So much stress, and I would panic, but I'd still do it because I wanted to keep my job, and I couldn't just walk away. And eventually, after my first year, I learned how to communicate under stress. And in doing that, I was promoted to management because they realized that I could communicate to the rest of the team, even with a heavy load of stress. Learning to communicate under stress when you're working with a model or working with a client, when you're out in the field and conditions, weather, the atmosphere around you is changing dramatically, especially weather can be a big one. It's important to be able to have a backup plan, have good communication under stress, and be able to adapt to the circumstances. I remember one of the weddings that I DJ'd back in the day for fun. And one wedding that I DJ'd, it was a really hot summer day, and they had put the DJ booth, and I say DJ booth, it was a table with a mixing board. The bride was walking down the aisle, and the DJ booth was in the back of this open field with the sun hammering down on us. And it was really hot. And my iPad that had the song playing that the bride was walking down the aisle to overheated. I had never in my life seen an iPod overheat. And the little screen of death came up and said, "Your iPod is overheating, so temporarily it's shutting off." And I said, "Great." And I took a second, and it was a half a second, really. And I breathed out. And then I jumped into action. I had a backup plan. I had my iPad that was in the shade this whole time. I pulled out the iPad. I opened Spotify. I had the song already downloaded on the iPad. I clicked it, played it, plugged it in, and nobody noticed. And the transition was 3 seconds, which felt like an eternity for me, maybe 10 seconds at the most. Thankfully, it was a long aisle, and nobody noticed. And it was because I was able to operate under stress. I was able to have a backup in place, and adapt to the circumstances. I didn't throw my iPad or throw my iPhone in the dirt and just be like, "Crap you, Apple." I don't know who says crap you. Anyway, I didn't freak out. I didn't panic. There was a backup plan in place. I adapted to the circumstances. That needs to be practiced. And that situation led me to get better at making more than one backup and having the ability to adapt under really stressful situations. And when I did that commercially, when I'd go out into the field with a $15,000 video gig in New York, where the tension is high in the room for me because all these people work at Facebook and Google and all these high, really, really high-end companies. And if I drop something, or if my lens, my battery pops out of my camera, or if I trip over something, like, people notice. And just the stress levels in my first couple of gigs in skyscrapers, they were so much higher, man. But after the first one, everything was fine. After the second one, it was fine. Nothing happened. I was very careful. I had multiple backup plans, and things do happen. And yet, the more you do them, the better off you'll be, the better prepared you'll be. and it'll just go so much smoother, and you'll be able to quickly jump right on it and adapt to those situations. Content creators have to be able to do that. Otherwise, I mean, don't do it. Like, go work in a studio where nothing changes around you. The same, 9 to 5 kind of life, because if you can't adapt to situations, you are not cut out for this. But I know that if you put your mind to it and get out and practice and on purpose throw things into the mix, call a friend at the last minute and say, hey, come shoot with me out at the lake, and throw a wrench into it. Like, oh, actually, I'm going to shoot with a film camera today, or today I'm only going to shoot on my 24 millimeter lens. I'm not shooting on anything else. And so you really have to adapt to the situations. You never know when the real camera battery, you forgot to bring the extra one and it dies, and then you have to use like this Kodak thing or whatever. Like, you don't know what happens with audio, especially in a wedding or something. I always have like 4 or 5 sources of audio going, because those words that they say at the altar only happen once. You can't do a redo. With an engagement photo shoot, I'll have 2 cameras, and if I didn't have 2 cameras, I would have my iPhone and a camera. Like, there's got to be 2 cameras, and one is available in case the other one isn't, and I can adapt to the situations. But the person dropping onto a knee and asking the question, that only happens once, and people can tell when you fake it in post-production. and it feels so inauthentic for the real people who are proposing. So learn to be adaptable. So when you're out in the field, you don't want it to feel like a new location, because that is going to put a lot of stress on you to figure everything out as soon as you get there. What I do is I scout out the location ahead of time. So for instance, I got booked to do a video gig in Silicon Valley, as I alluded to earlier. But I got there a day and a half early. So it was late afternoon, and then I had a whole next day before the shoot. I had ordered some lens rentals and some gear that I had shipped to a UPS store. I was worried that they wouldn't have it available for me if I didn't show up a day early, because who knows, sometimes shipping is weird, but I needed the gear for this shoot. And so I went early. I went to the film location. I couldn't get inside because it was locked. It was a corporate office. But I walked around the area. I got familiar with the nearest coffee shop. I got familiar with the walk from the bus station to the office, where I would be taking that in order to do the shoot at 9 o'clock in the morning. I also looked at lighting around the building, because we were going for a natural light kind of look, interior photography up against the windows and everything. And I was thinking about the time of day for the shoot and where the sun would be, and how I would have to adapt to that. And then when I went in for the actual shoot a day and a half later, I knew exactly where I was going. The office building wasn't like, I didn't get lost. And when I showed up, the environment inside was new to me. So I showed up 2 hours early and walked around and really planned out the shoot and where the best lighting was, where I'd get some cool reflections, where it would feel like a corporate-y kind of shoot and professional, and not like abstract visuals. You wanted it to feel very office-y, and at the same time, the focus should be on the subject. So it was like an office portrait shoot for this particular one. And so I wasn't feeling out of my element. I did have to adapt a few times in that situation. Some of the people were feeling like they didn't want their photo taken at that time of the day, and then 3 hours later, when they were ready, the lighting changed dramatically, and there was nothing I could do about that except change with the light. So we had to move to a different spot, and some of the photos had different backgrounds, and That wasn't ideal. That wasn't my fault. and so, but I was adaptable. I, went with it. And I had gone to the scene ahead of time, and I felt very confident in that shoot. So that can be very helpful. As a content creator, you need to be familiar with your surroundings as often as you can be. And again, I'll say it probably a million more times in this episode, be adaptable, be adaptable, be adaptable. Because it's as simple as things change. And especially if you're a traveling content creator, like, are you kidding me? Like, shooting in Hawaii is completely different than shooting in Florida. It just is. Totally different places. Yes, they're both warm and there's lots of sun. Two totally different places. So I would say, getting out there into the field before you're going to shoot, before you're working with a model or working with a client, going to a studio before you are going to record as a musician or a vocalist, going to the studio ahead of time and scouting out where you're going to be working and just getting your brain familiar with the environment, you're going to feel so much exponentially more comfortable when you enter in for the first time to do the work. The last thing I'll say about locations is don't forget to look around when you're in a spot. Like, if you show up and you're shooting with a client or a model at the Dumbo in Brooklyn, New York, and you guys are going to this one bridge, right? And you were gonna hit up the Dumbo area. You're gonna shoot the Brooklyn Bridge in the background, and it's gonna be a great shoot. Don't forget to look around. Like, look at other angles. And I know that sounds so rudimentary and like simple, but get on Google Maps and search for the area that you're gonna go, and try to find some unique perspectives that you hadn't originally planned on going. And also look in the area that you're going to be staying for really special spots that you can check out. I know that on a recent trip, and I feel like this happens on every trip, I go someplace and then later on I find out, oh my gosh, this place is so beautiful, and it was only 5 minutes away from where I was staying. And I just didn't think to look around for attractions where I was staying because I was so occupied on getting to that one spot way, a half an hour away or whatever. So be mindful of that. There are some amazing locations that you don't want to miss. The road to Hana in Maui, Hawaii has some incredible stops that aren't marked that you won't find on Google Maps. So searching on Google, hidden spots on the road to Hana and things like that will help, and you can plan those out, but also just be impromptu. So you're driving and you see a dirt road and it doesn't say private on it. Drive down it, check it out. You never know. We actually stumbled on the best black sand beach that we found in Maui, down this long dirt road that was a little sketchy, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't covered in our rental insurance for the car, but we found it, and we got to drive on the beach there, and it was one of our favorite spots. So just checking out your area as you're there, being exploratory, not just destination minded, is a free tip today. Let's talk a bit about delivery, because delivery is something that is often overlooked. You think about being a content creator, you think about creating content, but not necessarily so much on the delivery side. And the delivery side is really where a lot of the magic happens. Your relationship with clients happens here, because when they get a delivery from you that is exactly what they ordered, they're probably going to be disappointed. And many times they'll be disappointed because they hired you for X and then you showed up with X, but it would have been so much better if you had brought more to what they gave. So for instance, what they ordered. For instance, when you order a shirt from, a boutique company, and then they send you like this cool bracelet, you're like, whoa, that's dope. I wouldn't even thought to order a bracelet, and that came for free with the shirt. It was under promising, over deliver. And I would totally do more business again with that company who sent me just a little bit extra, because it felt like a surprise. It felt like they cared about me enough to go the extra mile. And that's what we want to do when we're working with people who are paying us. Especially, we want to promise this thing and definitely deliver on that, and give them even more, because that's where relationship happens. When I give you a gift, that's when you feel like, oh my gosh, me? You shouldn't have. But yeah, you should. So check that out. Think about how you can, just do something a little extra. That's all I'm saying. Do something a little extra. One way that I do under promise, over deliver is, if I'm hired for a video gig, I'll take photos along the way too. So for instance, I was hired to do a promotional video in Maryland back in September. And when I got there, did the video stuff. But as I'm doing video, in between each take, I flip my camera over to photo mode and take pictures of behind the scenes and of the actors that I was working with. And those pictures ended up being really great, portraits for their LinkedIn accounts or for promotional material in the future. And those were free. I included them as an extra gesture of just being like, yo, thanks for hiring me. Anything I can do to help, I'm here to solve all of your content problems. That organization's hired me for many, many things since then, and even before that. And it was just sort of like a give and take, give a little extra, do something special, and then you'll be memorable. Then those clients are going to remember you first, because you did something more than they were expecting, and it surprised them, and it felt like a gift. I want to give a quick tip to videographers today. Always shoot B-roll. No matter if you're hired for a documentary or a wedding or a corporate gig or a lecture or whatever, always shoot B-roll. B-roll is like a backup. And if something happens to footage that, maybe a drive corrupts or you lose something, at least you have a backup of all of this cool abstract montage-y kind of video stuff. A client could come to you after you finished a project and you gave them the lecture that they asked you to record, and then they were like, well, could we actually do an intro? And you have nothing to work with for an intro because you didn't record B-roll. But if you had taken 10 minutes of your gig and gone around and got some detail shots of the presenter shuffling papers, you got some wide shots of the audience, and just did had it in your mind to shoot some B-roll while you were there, you never know when that's going to come in handy, and you can charge way more for that too. So if they come to you and say, yeah, we want an intro, do you have anything you could shuffle together, which has happened to me several times. They've come to me and asked me for that, and usually I can say, especially now because I always do that, you can say, yeah, totally. I shot all this extra B-roll. I'd be happy to put it together in this beginning intro montage thing, add some music. That'll be an extra $750. So you're just upselling them on content that you had already created, already captured. And it's a good thing you did, because you came away with more than what they asked. And then you can offer them that. I'm not saying that you should give it to them for free. In many cases, I've shot B-roll and I haven't used it anywhere. But I usually do offer the client after if I'm able to get some extra stuff, after I deliver the original delivery, I can follow up with, I'm really glad you're happy with that. Here's something else that I could do. While I was on location, I shot all of this extra footage, and I'd love to put it over a video track, music track, and make it like a really cool montage to promote this lecture that I just delivered to you. For an extra $600, you could make this commercial of this lecture. So doing something like that is definitely worth the extra time that you'd put into shooting B-roll. And I would also say, as a videographer, go out and shoot photos along the way. as I said earlier, you never know when that's going to be really handy. Last tip for content creators. You are a storyteller in essence. And when you're out in the field and you're shooting photos of amazing landscapes and sometimes of people and situations and scenes, whatever, you, or I at least, tend to be very one-track minded. Like, I'm get the shot. And I don't take the time to document the experience, to live in the experience even. So I would say two things. First, learn to be present. Hand your camera over to your friend. If it's a sentimental time, you're on vacation, you're at a wedding that you weren't hired for and you're still shooting. You're on a trip with family or friends. Learn to live in that moment and not through a lens. And that's something that I've learned with age. And there are so many valuable moments that I've missed because, yeah, I got a great shot, but it wasn't worth not making that memory. It wasn't worth putting the camera away and just living in that and experiencing that with my friends and family and not through a lens. So I would say that. And lastly, I would also say, if you shoot anybody, you need to know their name and know their title. Christina is a general manager. Write it down, document it. And then what I often do is, and I'll do it on my iPhone, I'll just take a picture of them and then scribble, how you can edit on it. On the photo, I'll scribble their name and their title, or I'll make a note, which is usually what I do. I'll make a note and then take a picture of them, and then under that picture, I'll put their name and their title and make sure you spell it right. That's another big one. And just put it down. One of the recent photos I got on the road to Hana in Maui, I keep bringing that up because it was like the last trip that I've been on because of coronavirus. I've been stuck. So that's a very recent memory. I took the time to document all of these things about this Hawaiian man who has such an amazing story. And even though I'm not a blogger and I'm not like posting these stories often, that makes the best kind of Instagram caption. And it's valuable. If I ever print a photo and put it in a gallery, I have all of that knowledge about him in that moment. I would just encourage you to slow down and, even if it's at the stakes of missing a shot, the sun is setting and you're hustling to try to go get a different shot somewhere else, slow down and live in the moment, learn their names, hear their stories, and you're going to start loving doing this way more. It'll feel so much more fulfilling, not like it's a job, it'll feel like it's a passion when you can live it and you're not just moment to moment getting the shot. So yeah, that's it for content creation number 2. I hope that these tips were really helpful to you. I can tell you sincerely that this list today they've been game changers for me, and really upped the professionalism that I'm able to bring to the table when I'm hired to do work. So thanks for listening today, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you next Sunday. Peace.